My mother kicked me out at 16 because the twins deserve more. 17 years later, she comes back begging for money, but I exposed her and got a restraining order she'll never forget. I'm 33 years old. I work in upper-level management for a pretty big company, and I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago basically forced me to confront things I'd been trying to ignore for the last 17 years. You know, those things you put in a mental box and lock it up because if you open them, you're going to fall apart, and well, the box opened anyway. I guess I should start at the beginning, when my life was relatively normal, or at least what I thought was normal at the time. I grew up with just my mother, Teresa. My biological father, Andrew, took off before I was born, so he was never part of the equation. And honestly, I never missed him, because you can't miss something you never had. You know what I mean? Teresa and I lived in a small apartment, nothing fancy but not terrible either, and she worked in administration at a clinic or something like that. We weren't rich, but we didn't lack anything critical, like we had food and a roof and those basic things. The relationship with her was good, or so I thought. She was my mom, the only family I had aside from my paternal grandparents, James and Virginia, who lived like an hour away and who I'd see occasionally on holidays and birthdays. Everything changed when I was like 11 years old, almost 12, and Teresa met Lawrence. I remember perfectly the day she brought him home for the first time because I was playing video games in the living room, and she came in all nervous and smiley saying, "I have someone I want you to meet." And there was this tall guy, like in his early 42nds, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. From the beginning, something about him made me uncomfortable, but it wasn't anything I could point to specifically, just a weird feeling in my stomach every time he was around. Teresa was clearly in love or whatever, and within months, Lawrence was practically living with us. They got married when I was 11, a small, quick courthouse wedding, and suddenly I had a stepfather who basically ignored me, except when he needed me out of the way. Things got really different when Teresa got pregnant, like 6 months after the wedding. I was 12 years old at that point, and I remember Teresa sat me down on the couch, all excited to tell me you're going to have a little brother or sister, and I tried to look happy because I was supposed to be, right? But honestly, I felt weird about the whole thing. Like my place in the family was suddenly less important. Turns out it wasn't one baby, but two. Twins. And when Mason and his brother were born, I'm not going to give the other one's name because I haven't talked to him yet, the attention I was getting basically evaporated. And look, I understand that babies need a lot of attention. I'm not an idiot, but it was like I had stopped existing overnight. Lawrence never treated me like a son. Didn't even try to pretend he cared. He was cold, distant, and when the twins were born, he basically saw me as a nuisance in his perfect new family. Teresa changed too. Or maybe she just showed who she really was and I'd been too young to realize it before. She started prioritizing the twins in everything, which I guess is normal to some extent, but she took it to a completely different level. If the twins needed something, they got it immediately. If I needed something, it was wait or ask Lawrence, or we don't have money for that right now. The years between 12 and 16 were basically me becoming invisible in my own house. I did my homework, went to school, tried not to cause problems, and watched Teresa and Lawrence build this perfect family around the twins, while I was like an old piece of furniture that was there, but nobody really wanted. My grandparents, James and Virginia, noticed something was wrong and started inviting me more often to stay with them on weekends, which I happily accepted because at least someone acted like they loved me. Then came the day that changed everything. I was 16 years old, about to start my junior year of high school, and I came home from school on a normal Tuesday, or at least I thought it was normal. Teresa and Lawrence were sitting at the kitchen table with serious expressions, and Lawrence told me, "Sit down, we need to talk." My first thought was that someone had died or something because of the way they looked, but no, it was something completely different and 1,000 times worse. Teresa started talking, and basically told me that things were very tight financially, that the twins were growing and needed more space and more resources, and that they'd made a very difficult decision. I was sitting there thinking, okay, we're moving to a cheaper place or I'm going to have to get a part-time job to help, but then Lawrence dropped the bomb. He told me, "Kevin, we think it's best for everyone if you find somewhere else to live. The twins need their own room, and we simply can't support 3 kids on our current income." I sat there unable to process what I'd just heard. Were they kicking me out? Was my own mother kicking me out of the house at 16 because they couldn't afford me? And the worst part, the absolutely worst part, was when Teresa said with teary eyes but a firm voice the twins deserve more. Kevin, you're almost an adult, you can manage, but they're little, and they're my priority now. Those exact words, the twins deserve more, were burned into my brain like with a hot iron, and I swear I still hear them when I close my eyes. I asked them what I was supposed to do, where I was supposed to go, and Lawrence said you can go to your grandparents or with friends, but we need you to pack your things and leave this weekend. This weekend. They were literally giving me 4 days to pack up my entire life and get out. I didn't cry in that moment. I couldn't. I was in complete shock. I just nodded and went to my room and sat on the bed, unable to think of anything coherent. That night, I called James and Virginia, crying, something I rarely did, because I always tried to be strong or whatever, and I told them everything. They were furious, absolutely furious, and they told me to pack everything and that they'd come for me the next day, not to worry, that they would take care of me. On Saturday, James and Virginia arrived with a borrowed truck and helped me pack all my things while Teresa hid in her room, and Lawrence watched us with his arms crossed like we were the ones doing something wrong. James told Teresa that it was a disgrace. How could she do this to her own son? And she just cried and said, "You have no idea how hard this is for me." And James responded, "It doesn't seem that hard since you're actively choosing to throw your son out on the street." We loaded everything into the truck. I said goodbye to the twins who were like 4 years old and didn't really understand what was happening. And I left what had been my home for 16 years, knowing I'd probably never come back. Living with James and Virginia was a literal lifesaver. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom house and gave me the guest room they used as an office. They moved everything to make space for me and basically treated me like I was their own son. Virginia cooked for me, James helped me with homework, and both constantly reminded me that what Teresa had done wasn't my fault, that I wasn't a burden, that they loved me. But I felt guilty anyway because they were already retired and living on a fixed budget, and I knew that having me there meant extra expenses they really couldn't afford, even though they'd never admit it. So I got a job at a coffee shop near school, working after classes and on weekends, and I started giving James and Virginia money for food and expenses. But they didn't want to accept it, but I insisted because I wasn't going to be more of a burden than I already was. I finished high school working basically all the time. I wasn't in class. My grades dropped a little, but not enough to ruin my chances for college. And during all that time, Teresa didn't call even once. Not once. It was like I had stopped existing for her completely. When it came time to apply to universities, I'd saved some money, but obviously not enough to pay tuition. I needed someone to co-sign student loans, and obviously Teresa was the logical option because she was my mother, right? James helped me contact her. We explained the situation, and she said flatly, no, that she and Lawrence didn't have money for that they needed to save for the twins' college. The twins were like 6 years old at that point. It was like 12 years before they'd go to college, but apparently that was more important than helping me who needed the help right at that moment. It was my Aunt Pamela, James's sister, who ended up saving me. She lived in another state. I'd never seen her much when I was a kid, but when she found out about the whole situation, she called me and said, "Kevin, I'm going to co-sign your loans. You're going to go to college, and you're going to make something of your life." Pamela wasn't rich or anything. She worked as a nurse, but she had good credit and a huge heart, and basically bet on me when my own mother wouldn't. To this day, I consider Pamela more family than Teresa because she was there when I really needed her. College was tough. I'm not going to lie. I worked 3 different jobs during those 4 years, slept like 4 or 5 hours a night, and basically lived on coffee and cheap food. But I graduated, got a degree in business administration, and started working at a mid-sized company in an entry-level position. James and Virginia came to my graduation. Pamela drove like 6 hours to be there, and when I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, all I thought was, I did it. I did it without her, without any of them. Teresa didn't come, obviously. I didn't even know if she found out I graduated. The next years were of constant hard work. I moved up quickly in the company because it turns out that when you spend Your teenage years and youth working multiple jobs and dealing with difficult situations, you develop a work ethic and resilience that others don't have. At 25, I was already an area manager. At 28, I was a regional manager. And at 30, I reached upper-level management, which is basically where I am now. I earn well, very well compared to where I came from. I have a decent apartment, a reliable car, and I've completely paid off my student loans. Pamela started crying when I told her I'd made the last payment, because she knew better than anyone what it had cost me to get there. During all those years, I had no contact with Teresa or Lawrence. Nothing. Zero. I blocked their numbers, blocked their social media, and basically erased them from my life because frankly I didn't have the emotional energy to deal with them. James and Virginia saw them occasionally because the twins were technically their grandchildren too, but they respected my decision not to want to know anything and never forced me to reconcile, or those things people usually do with the whole, but it's your family thing. Then, like 8 months ago, Pamela mentioned at a casual family gathering, which Teresa had gone to, I obviously wasn't there, that I'd received a big promotion. She didn't give many details, just said that Kevin is doing really well in his career. He just got promoted and is in an important leadership position. She didn't think anything of it. She was just proud of me and mentioned it in passing, but apparently that was enough for Teresa to find out that her son, the one she threw out on the street at 16, now made good money. 3 weeks after that gathering, like on a Saturday afternoon, I was in my apartment watching TV and resting because it had been a heavy week at work, and the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I went to open it thinking maybe it was a package or something, and there were Teresa and Lawrence standing at my door. It had been 17 years since the last time I saw them. And honestly, I froze because I couldn't process that they were there in front of me. Teresa looked older, obviously, with more gray hair and wrinkles, and Lawrence basically the same but with more of a belly. Before I could say anything, Teresa said with a forced smile, "Hi, Kevin. I know it's been a long time, but we need to talk to you. Can we come in?" I told them no. To say what they had to say there at the door, and Teresa's smile disappeared immediately. Lawrence went straight to the point. He said, "The twins are going to start college next year and we need help with tuition. We know you're doing well in your career and we thought you could contribute." Contribute. That was the word he used. As if I owed them something, as if it were my responsibility to pay for the twins' education after what they did to me. I laughed. I literally laughed in his face and told them, "You have to be joking. You can't be so shameless as to show up after 17 years asking for money." Teresa started with the emotional speech. She said, "Kevin, I know things ended badly between us, but they're your brothers. It's family, and you have the resources to help." I responded that they stopped being my family the day they kicked me out to give them my room and my share of the family budget. I reminded her that when I needed help for college, she refused because she was saving for them, and now that they needed help, I was doing exactly what she did, prioritizing my own future over theirs. Lawrence got furious and started yelling that I was selfish. How could I be so cruel? And I simply closed the door in their faces and locked it. I thought that would be the end of it, that they'd leave and leave me alone, but oh no, Teresa had other plans. She literally walked into the offices asking for me, and when they told me I had a visitor in reception and I went down, there she was. She started making a scene, crying and saying loudly so everyone could hear that her son had abandoned her, that she just needed help for her other children, and I was refusing out of spite. The people in reception stared. Some coworkers passed by and saw the drama, and I was mortified. I called security and they escorted her out while she yelled, "This isn't going to end like this, Kevin. This isn't going to end like this." 2 days later, literally 2 days later, she showed up again, but this time at my apartment again, and when I told her through the door to leave or I'd call the police, she started banging on the door and screaming. My neighbors came out to see what was happening. It was a horrible scene. And when I opened the door to tell her to leave, she tried to push me and force her way in. We ended up in some kind of struggle in the hallway with her trying to get in and me trying to keep her out, all in front of my neighbors who didn't know what to do. And finally one of them called the police. When the officers arrived, Teresa was literally sitting in the NES hallway crying and telling them I was a horrible son who abandoned his family. and I explained the whole situation to them while the neighbors confirmed that she'd been banging on my door and trying to force her way in. The officers made her leave with a warning, but they suggested I file a formal complaint and request a restraining order if she continued harassing me, and that was exactly what I did. The next day, I went to the station, filed a report detailing everything, including her appearance at my work, and requested the restraining order. The process was faster than I expected. I had a hearing where I presented all the evidence, including testimonies from my neighbors and from security people at my work, and the judge granted me the restraining order. Teresa can't come near me, my house, or my work within 100 meters for the next 2 years. When they notified her of the order, she apparently made another scene, but that wasn't my problem anymore. The situation with Teresa caused an earthquake in the extended family. James and Virginia, who until that moment had maintained a cordial relationship with her because of the twins, basically cut off all contact. James told her that after seeing how she treated me not only when she kicked me out but now too, they didn't want anything to do with her. And that meant they also lost regular contact with the twins, which I know hurt them because they really loved those kids. But for them, I was their priority, and they chose me. Pamela had never had much contact with Teresa anyway, but after this she made it very clear that if she approached me again, she would also take legal action. As a gesture of gratitude to Pamela, because honestly without her I wouldn't be where I am. I bought her an all-expenses-paid trip to a place she always wanted to visit. When I gave her the gift, she started crying and told me I didn't have to do that, but I told her that of course I had to do it, that she had invested in me when nobody else would, and now I could give back even just a little bit of everything she gave me. That trip was like 3 months ago, and she came back happy, with 1,000 photos, and telling me it had been one of the best moments of her life. I thought that would be the end of everything. That Teresa would give up and move on with her life, and I'd move on with mine. But like a month ago, I received a Facebook message from someone named Mason. At first I didn't recognize the name, but then I saw his profile picture and realized he was one of the twins. He's already 18 years old, basically an adult, and his message said something like, "Hi Kevin, I know you probably don't want to know anything about us after everything that happened, but I've been thinking a lot about you lately. Mom and Lawrence don't talk about you, but I found old photos and asked the grandparents about you. I just found out about everything that happened when you were 16, and also what happened recently with Mom. I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry about all that, and that I'd like to get to know you if you want. No pressure. I'd completely understand if you don't want to, but I thought I'd try." I didn't respond to him immediately because honestly I didn't know what to feel or what to say. On one hand, Mason had nothing to do with the decisions Teresa and Lawrence made. He was literally a baby when they kicked me out. On the other hand, he's Teresa's son. He's part of the reason they kicked me out in the first place, though obviously that wasn't his fault. I talked to James and Virginia about it, and they told me that Mason and his brother always asked about me when they were younger, that Teresa told them I had left because I wanted to and didn't want to know anything about them, basically told them a completely different version of the facts. After thinking about it for like 2 weeks, I responded to Mason. I told him I appreciated that he'd taken the time to contact me, that I had nothing against him personally, but that I needed time to process everything. I suggested that maybe we could talk by video call first, nothing heavy, just get to know each other a bit, and he agreed. We had our first video call like a week ago. We talked for like an hour, and it was weird but not terrible. He apologized like 1,000 times for Teresa, though I told him he didn't have to. And he told me that he and his brother are basically paying for their own college with loans and jobs, because Teresa and Lawrence, it turns out, didn't save as much as they said, and don't qualify for much financial aid. I'm not going to lie. Part of me felt a bit of satisfaction knowing that Teresa ended up in the same situation she left me in, needing student loans and having to work to pay for college. But most of me just felt sorry for Mason and his brother because they didn't ask for any of this. I told Mason I was willing to keep talking, to see if we could build some kind of relationship as brothers, but that it was going to be a slow process because I have a lot of emotional baggage. With this whole situation, he understood perfectly and said he was in no rush, that he just appreciated I was giving him a chance. I still don't know what's going to happen with all this. The restraining order against Teresa is still in effect, and I plan to renew it when it expires. I have no interest in having a relationship with her or Lawrence, and honestly, I don't think that will ever change. The damage they did was too deep, and the fact that they only showed up when they found out I have money tells me everything I need to know about their true intentions. With Mason, I don't know. Maybe we can build something. Maybe not. I'm cautiously optimistic, but also realistic about the fact that he comes with connections to people I don't want in my life. What I do know is that I did the right thing by refusing to give them money and by setting firm boundaries. For a long time, especially when I was younger, I felt guilty about being angry with Teresa, like I was the one who was wrong for not being able to forgive and forget. But now, after all this, after seeing that she literally only looked for me because she needed something from me and not because she really cared about rebuilding a relationship, I know my anger was always valid. James told me something that stuck with me, he said, Kevin. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people who hurt you back into your life. It means letting go of the weight of what they did to you so you can move forward. And that's what I'm trying to do. A few days ago, Mason sent me a photo from when we were kids. Apparently, he found it in an old box at Teresa's house. In the photo, I'm like 13 years old and I'm holding the twins who are babies, and I'm smiling. I don't remember that moment specifically, but seeing myself there smiling with them made me feel something strange, like nostalgia mixed with sadness for everything that was lost. Mason wrote under the photo, "I wish I'd grown up knowing you," and I responded honestly, "Maybe we can still get to know each other now." Better late than never, I guess. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but I'm willing to try, for him and for me, to see if something good can come out of this whole mess. The truth is that the family that really matters, the one that was there when I needed them most, was James, Virginia, and Pamela. They're my real family, not by blood but by choice, because they chose me when it would have been easier not to. Teresa can continue calling herself my mother, biologically, but a mother is the one who raises, who supports, who's there in difficult moments, and that was never her. So I guess in the end, after all the drama and pain, what I learned is that you choose your family, and I already chose mine a long time ago. Mason can be part of that family someday if things work out, but that remains to be seen. For now, I'm good with where I am, with the people I have, and with having set the boundaries I needed to set. And that, after everything, is enough.